So, by show of hands, how many of you guys think that most millionaires come from rich families, like their parents were rich? Nobody. Okay. All right. Well, you guys are actually right because 86% of millionaires are actually self-made. So majority of millionaires are actually first generation millionaires. It's not like they're inherited money from their parents. Um, so when I was growing up, I remembered I envied the rich because I didn't know the statistic. When I first read about the statistic, it actually also changed my life. Because in my mind, I kept thinking, there's no way I could be one of those guys. I don't have the talent to be, a rapper or something like that. Like I don't have amazing baseball skills. But after I learned that statistic, I realized that you could progress in life. There is social mobility left in us. And the other thing that stopped me when I was younger, the other thing that stopped me from thinking that I could achieve those things was that I didn't come from a rich family. In fact, my family was actually extremely poor. Um, my parents were actually from the slums of China, and my father he worked in a farm that was run by the communist government, and he was only working for like a few cents a day. And my mother, she lived in the projects when she was growing up, and I remember visiting her hometown um, because my grandfather was actually still living there when I grew up, and we visited him. And his apartment, where she grew up, her apartment was very small, like so small that it's like even smaller than a jail cell. And in that apartment, there was only one bunk bed, and that was most of the apartment, with a lot of like scattered stuff. But half of the room was just that bunk bed, and it wasn't even a fancy bed. It was just a piece of wood, and the mattress was only like 1 inch thick. And I remember they made me try to sleep on it because I had to stay there overnight. They made me sleep on it. I just couldn't because it's like you're sleeping on a piece of wood. I slept on the floor instead. It felt more better than the bed. Um, so yeah, my family didn't really come from much, but that didn't stop them from trying to get a better life. And I'm telling you this story because they immigrated to New York City, and they had my mother. I mean, they had my brother and me. Um, but before that, they actually came here with almost nothing, just a shirt on their backs. And my father, he was so poor when he moved here that he couldn't afford to live anywhere except at the YMCA. I don't know if you guys know this, but you can actually live at the YMCA for about like $1 or so per night, and they'll give you a bed and a shower. But this is not some fancy room. All you're getting is a mattress on the floor in this large gym auditorium with other mattresses with other like homeless people living there. So that was my dad's life when he moved here. And my mother's life wasn't any better. She didn't have any skills, um, and because she didn't have an education. Same thing with my father. He didn't have an education because when you're poor, you can't afford it. You just have to start working to provide for your family. You don't have a chance to take your time to learn stuff. She had to work at a sweatshop in Chinatown, and yeah, sweatshops are real. They actually exist. Um, but yeah, but that didn't stop them from trying to get a better life. So my brother and I grew up in Queens, New York, and we were poor, but we were happy. We were happy because we had a better life than what our parents had at least. So fast forward to 20 years later, to about like half a decade ago. This was when I was in college. Um, and it was your typical college experience. Like I fell in love, had my heart broken. I learned computer science and engineering. Um, but the thing is, when I was in high school, I had really good grades, um, and I went to UCLA, which is a pretty good school. But since I was so used to getting good grades and so used to being, because I graduated at the top of my class, I was so used to being better than their students. But once I got to UCLA, my first semester, I only had a C plus average. And yeah, that was a very humbling experience for me because I realized that, I'm actually not as smart as I thought I would be. So that actually changed. I had to change that. And the reason why I had such low grades was because I played a lot of video games. World of Warcraft, you guys. Yeah. So that kind of ruined my grades, but I stopped playing them. I studied more. I formed like study groups. I went to summer school, and there's one thing that I changed about myself that I think had the biggest impact on my life. And it was that I started to learn things on my own. I didn't rely on textbooks. I didn't rely on teachers to teach me things. I decided to just go out there and learn all the things that my college wasn't teaching me. A lot of it was like the new technology, like when I was back then, web development was still kind of new-ish. So things like PHP and CSS and SQL, I mean, they weren't teaching that at school yet, because I don't know why, but so I had to learn all that stuff on my own. And all that hard work actually paid off because I ended up with a 3.8 GPA by the time I graduated. So does that mean that having that grade, does that mean that I'm smarter than their kids? No. I mean, they're around the same intelligence as me. But it just means that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. After I graduated, I went to a tech company called Earthlink. And they hired me because I actually had web development skills, whereas my classmates didn't. So that goes to the part of me saying it worked out for me from learning things that they weren't teaching at college. And everything was going well, just your typical, just working at 9 to 5, and everything was okay. But in October of that year, the same year that I graduated, I got a phone call from my aunt that changed my life forever, and she called to tell me that my father had died, and yeah, he was ill. We knew that he was ill. He was ill for the past 3 years before he passed away. But we always thought that he would recover, and he just never did. But yeah, our whole family was devastated. Bruce Lee once said, "Don't pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one." So the next few months afterwards, they were possibly the most grueling months of my life. After my father left us, we didn't have that much money. I mean, this was during 2008, so it was the beginning of the recession, and basically all of our assets were dropping in value. Our homes and our stocks and savings, it's like we were just living off savings at that point. And no one in our family was working because my older brother, he just graduated with PhD, and the problem is that the companies didn't want to hire a PhD student because they were expensive. They rather hire an undergraduate and just train them themselves. It's cheaper just to train them than to hire someone who demands more pay. So he didn't have a job. And my mother hasn't worked ever since she worked at the sweatshop because she was just a homemaker. She doesn't have skills, like I said. But to make matters worse is that after my father passed away, she started having mental problems. She was always a schizophrenic all her life, but when you're a schizophrenic, you have episodes, like psychotic episodes, and they don't trigger until something stressful in your life happens. And yeah, my father's death was enough to trigger that, and she didn't recover for months after that. So I had to move back from California. I had to stop working at Earthlink. I had to move back to New York to take care of her, and I ended up being the only one who got a job when I found a job at Columbia University. So this was also another crucial point in my life, because at Columbia University, they gave me a MacBook, and back then, if you wanted to code iPhone apps, you needed a MacBook or iMac. You can't work on Windows. So I'm saying it was pivotal in my life because of that MacBook. As soon as I got it, I decided to learn how to code apps. And the reason is because I saw that someone who used to work at Cisco, he said that he made $300,000 from making apps, and he quit his job at Cisco. And so I decided maybe I should give that a try and try to make some side money so that I could, provide for my family, for my brother who's out of work, and my mother. And it's a skill that I learned from my father, who's always taught me to try to learn new things and try to, make things on your own. Don't rely on other people. So basically, since I was working a full-time job, I had to learn to code apps on weekends and nights. So that just made my life even more difficult, because I had to take care of my mother. I had to go to this full-time job, and then I had to code apps on weekends and nights. And also had a girlfriend at the time, so it was just a lot. And to make matters worse, my house actually caught on fire. They don't know why. I think it was electrical fire or something, but it burned my basement, and it just spread to the rest of the house. And so after all these things of just the stress and my father's death, I actually contemplated suicide at that point. But I never went through with it, because if I left, then no one would take care of my mother, because my brother was in London. That's where he went to college, and he was married to someone who was also in London. So it didn't make sense for him to come back here, and I would be running away from my responsibilities if I committed suicide. It was a coward's way out if I committed suicide, but I did fantasize about it, and I fantasized about it because even just the idea of nothingness, just because I'm not religious, so I believe that just nothingness once you commit suicide was better than what I had. So, but everything did eventually pick up. I started coding some better and better apps. My first app was a web browser. It wasn't very impressive, but it made like $50 a day. And then eventually I went on to create this one app, which is the most popular app I ever created, called 50 Radio. And it's a police scanner app. And what that means is that you can listen to what the police say on the radios. And you can also listen to firefighters and ambulance and air traffic control towers. It's not just police. It's anything that's on the radio with radio waves. You can listen to it. And in 2009, which is only a year after my father passed away, that app became the #1 app in all of November. So yeah, that completely changed my life. And the first question people ask me is, how did you come up with that idea? How did you come up with the idea of a police scanner app? And it's because I grew up in New York City, where you hear a lot of police cars. I don't know if you guys have that around here, but in New York City, every day you're going to hear at least 3 or 4 police cars pass by you. And when I went to middle school, it was across the street from a police station. So basically all my life I've been, face to face with police officers. And even when I grew up, even when I was growing up, when I was like 5 or so, I remember someone asking me, I think it was a teacher, she asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I said I wanted to be a police officer. And she asked me why, and I said I want to protect people and help them. But as I was growing up, I never became a police officer, but I still want to help them out in a way. And that's where the police scanner app came in. I get emails from policemen and firemen thanking me because their radio sometimes doesn't work, out of batteries or just broken, maybe got wet or something like that, and they switch over to my app, and then they could just use my app and listen to the police. During tornadoes and hurricanes and tsunamis and floods, a lot of people use my apps during those natural disasters because the police get information faster than the news media does. And the news media itself is also using police scanners just to get information. So a lot of people need that few precious minutes before they hear it on the radio to know that if a tornado is going to touch down in their town, get out of there. It could be the difference of life or death for them. And ER doctors use this app as well because they can get information about gunshot victims or like people who just seriously injured, and they need it because they need to prep their ER room for a particular injury. So if they have my app, they get a few extra minutes to prepare their ER room before the victim actually arrives in their hospital. And also there's other uses, like there's something called Detroit's Devil's Night, which is a really horrible tradition during Halloween in Detroit where arsonists burn down houses for no reason. They're just assholes, I guess. But volunteer firefighters, people who are not normally firefighters, they use my app because they don't have the firefighter radio. They use my app to get information about where these arsons are happening, and then they would go and help out the firefighters to help put out the fires because they burn down dozens of houses and the firefighters are just overwhelmed. They don't have time to put them all out. So someone once asked me, what differentiates you from like the thousands of Google employees or the other tech company employees? What makes you different? Are you just lucky? Are you better coder, or are you more creative? I actually don't even think that Google would have hired me. I'm actually not a genius. I just want to put that out there. I'm not some super smart guy. But the difference is that when you work for a company like Google or any other tech company, you're being paid X dollars per hour, and that's all you're getting paid. If you create like the next, big thing at Google, you're not going to get paid millions of dollars for that. You're still going to get paid whatever, So that's the difference between me and a Google employee. They said that for every Google employee, like if you divide Google's revenue, which is $55 billion, they only have 47,000 employees, meaning for every employee they have, and that's even including janitors and stuff like that. If you include everyone who works for Google, every Google employee equals to about $1 million in revenue, but Google doesn't pay them $1 million a year. Instead, all those profits go out to stockholders and CEOs, all the bosses. But if those Google employees were brave enough, they would quit their jobs and work on their own projects, make apps like me or do something else. It doesn't have to be apps. And then they would see 100% of the profits, meaning their salary won't be determined by how many hours they worked. It would be determined by how many people bought your app. But the reason why a lot of people don't do this is because it's scary. It's scary not to have a stable source of income, because who knows, maybe your app doesn't do that well. Then you're screwed. You don't have any money then. And when I started, I was actually scared as well. I was still working at Columbia University, even though I already made $1 million from my app. I was still working at my 9-to-5 because I was scared that it could end at any moment. It wasn't a very stable source of income. Yeah, but I remembered I once showed up to my work in like a really nice car, and my bosses were like, what the heck, why are you still working here? And that's actually the point when I quit, when I realized, yes, why am I still working here? Because they're only paying me like 50 grand a year when I was already making 50 grand a week. So I also get asked is it luck? Is it luck that I got rich? And I want to say that it's not luck, because I actually, in 2013, I actually had 3 apps in the top 10, like the very top 10. 3 separate apps in the top 10 on the same exact day, which has never been achieved by anyone before. I've had an app called Drudge Report, which is in the top 10 news for the past 5 years. I've had other apps like games and stuff. And there's also this other thing I did to test whether it was luck or not, whether I was a one-hit wonder or not. And what I did was, so keep in mind that I'm not the only one who made a police scanner app. There's others out there. It's not like it's exclusive to me. So I decided, since I was already the #1 police scanner app, I decided, what if I create another one just to compete against myself? But I assumed a new identity. I made a new company, and I made a new interface and a new app, so none of my old customers would know that it's me. And I did it again. I beat out all my competition again, so I became the #2 police scanner app. So that, in a way, that made me kind of like Coca-Cola and Pepsi at the same time. But my customers had no idea that they were getting the same app from the same person, just with a different look. So it's easy to point to people like me and say, hey, you just got lucky. But anyone could have done what I did. Anyone. And anyone could have learned coding. It's not like it's exclusive to me. It's not some special skill that I have. It's not some talent that you're born with. And I learned coding, and I learned app development, and that's something that even my own classmates from college could have done. I've had thousands of classmates who took computer science as well. They could have made apps. They could have done the same thing I did, but it was a relatively new thing to create iPhone apps back then, and I took the chance. So I don't think it's luck, because I actually chose to create apps. It's not like, apps chose me. I chose to create apps, and those particular apps that I made, I chose them because in a way, I kind of knew that there was a market for them. So it wasn't like I just randomly had a hat that had a ton of app ideas and I just randomly drew one. It's not like that. See, if I did that, then it would be luck, but it wasn't. It's calculated risk. So for those of you who kind of want to go on your own and be self-employed and not be part of this corporate machine, I have some business advice for you that I've learned for the past 5 years. And the #1 advice I would say, which is kind of like the step 1, would be to learn how to learn. By this I mean, go out there and learn, and if you want to be lazy and well, I don't want to say lazy, but if you want to just coast in your office job, as in just do your minimum or just do enough for your job, then it's fine. There's some people who just like being in their 9 to 5. That's fine. But for the rest of you, you should try to learn more than what's required of you. Go learn how to learn. And by this I mean, don't rely on some teacher to teach you. Just grab a book. There's a lot of internet tutorials out there. They're free. Their library's free. Just go out there and learn. Learn to be self-sufficient. Learn to be an individual. Someone who's not so easily replaced. My second advice is, don't quit until you've given your last shot. And by this I mean that in 2008 I hit rock bottom. My father died, and mother's schizophrenic, and house was on fire. That was rock bottom for me. I can definitively say that was rock bottom for me. But in 2009, which is a span of just 1 year, I had an app in the top 100, which is very impressive. So anything could turn around at any given moment. So just don't give up so easily. And my third advice is that content is king, as in content is what keeps the users coming back. So where does this content come from? If you're a newspaper company, you create your own content. You hire workers and you create your own content. But a lot of the new apps these days, they rely on users to create content. I'm talking about Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. Those are empty apps, but you're filling in those apps and your friends are. So you're the content creator and they're making money off your work, essentially, because you're not getting paid to do those things. And then there's also other things like Reddit. I don't know if you guys heard of it, but that's where people you don't know, not your friends, but people, strangers on the internet, fill up the content. But it's still the same concept. Users are filling up the content. And what's funny is that I've noticed a lot of newspaper companies, well, not newspaper, but news sites like Huffington Post, they're starting to just steal content from what they find on Reddit. So in a way, a lot of the news sites are starting to become just user-driven. And it's like free labor for you guys. You don't actually have to create the content yourself. So my fourth advice is to be innovative. And it's kind of hard to say that when there's so many apps out there, and there's probably someone already did your idea. And a lot of the famous apps you see out there are actually copied off previous apps or maybe a previous website. For example, Angry Birds. You thought that was new? It's not. It used to be a Flash game where it was just a catapult that shoots at a castle. They stole that idea. Or like Flappy Birds. That used to be another Flash game that was a helicopter where you click the mouse and it moves the helicopter. So don't think that you actually have to be that innovative. A lot, Facebook copied MySpace. Google is just Yahoo, right? And even Snapchat is kind of a new thing, but photo sharing has been around for a long time. They just added one new feature, which is that the photo gets deleted. So you really only have to be, you only actually need that one feature that separates you. It doesn't have to. You're not reinventing the wheel. You're just standing out. My fifth advice is to grow your user base. So when you have your app, you need the users to actually make money. And here's some tricks that I've seen people use. Facebook and Gmail, they used to make people feel left out if they didn't have it. And the way they did that is that you had to be invited to join Facebook in the beginning. And that made every college kid want a Facebook back then. When I was in college, I was one of those kids who was like, yo, invite me, And even Gmail, when it was in beta, it was invite only. And it was a really good service because you get 2 gigabytes of mail when everyone else was just giving you like 50 megabytes or something like that. And everyone wanted Gmail. They wanted so much that they were being sold on eBay, the invites, even though it's a free invite. So you're kind of creating this artificial exclusivity. Just creating this demand from limiting who uses your app or uses your service. And the other thing to make people feel like they have to have your app is that you have to make them feel like they have to get it to stay in touch with their friends. So if you don't have like a Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or Snapchat or WhatsApp, I mean, you feel like you're out of touch with your friends because that's how people communicate now. And Instagram in the beginning, they didn't restrict users to only those invited when they started, but they did do this other trick, which is that you can share a photo on Instagram to Facebook. That's fine, and then you can see the photo. But if you clicked on that user and you want to see all the other photos from that user, you can't until you get the app. So what they did is they force you to download the app and create your own Instagram account just to see someone else's photos. And I think that was really sneaky because it at least made me get the app as well. But they're worth $1 billion now, so I guess it worked. My sixth advice is don't bombard users with ads. So when Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and Twitter, when they all started, they actually didn't have ads. They were being funded by what's called venture capitalists or angel investors, or basically people who had a ton of money, and all their servers were paid by these people. But if you could do that, I would suggest not to have ads. I would suggest get the users first. That's the most important. The users first before you think about making money. Because if you bombard them with ads, they're not going to be willing to tell their friends about the app. Or well, they'll be less willing. So try not to think about money first. Just try to think in the same way that a drug dealer would think. You know, give them a sample of your drug. Get them hooked first. And then you could sell ads to them. So by this I mean Facebook and Instagram, they all have ads now. But that was after they got their billions of users. So, and everyone already had all their photos on there, so they're not gonna quit just because ads started appearing. So it was pretty sneaky. It was like a bait and switch basically. So my 7th advice is get good ratings and reviews for your app or whatever business you go into. You have to get those users ratings. And this is because people nowadays, they rely on strangers' ratings. Like it doesn't matter if it's a movie. People will go on IMDb or Metacritic to look at, or Rotten Tomatoes to look at reviews. It doesn't matter if you're even buying a toilet. People will go on Amazon and check it out and see how well that toilet is rated. So it's the same idea when you sell an app. People are going to look at those reviews and ratings to see if it's worth downloading. And I say this because every time I make an update to my app, all my ratings get wiped out. And you basically start from 0. And every time that happens, like normally my apps have like either a 5-star rating or a 4.5 star, which is really high. Every time that happens, I see the number of downloads I get go down until I get all those ratings back again. So that's quite a testament to how important ratings are. So how do you get these ratings? There's a trick to it that a lot of apps are doing. They either put a rate us button on it. Like I remember when Flappy Birds was out, it just had 3 buttons: start game, rate us, and instructions. That was it. But that rate us button was pivotal because they had like millions of ratings. And another trick is that there's actually a piece of code online called Apparator, where you could put it into your app and it would ask the user to rate your app, but not any user. It asks them after a few days or after they've run your app for, and you can set this, you can change this. It's like, let's say a user opened your app 7 times after a whole week. Who would do that? It's someone who likes your app, right? So since you know that person likes your app, that's a good person to ask to rate your app, and they're more likely to rate your app highly than say like you ask them right away. I mean, they haven't even explored your app yet, and you shouldn't really ask them to rate your app then. So in a way, you're kind of filtering out the people who rate your app, and that's a good way to make your app rating go up instead of down. And another trick that I've seen used, and this is really sneaky, and I think Apple might even ban your app for doing something like this, but a trick I've seen is that some people straight out ask the user, do you like our app? And it's a yes or no question. And if they answer yes, then they ask them, do you want to rate our app? But if they answer no, they don't ask them anything. So it's another way to filter out people. It's very sneaky. But when they answer no, here's the other interesting thing. When they answer no, they actually give them a comment box. And they ask them to tell us why they don't like the app. And the reason for this is because, as I'll tell you, my 8th advice, which is that your critics are your best friends. And by this I mean the best feedback you can get is from your users. They're the ones who are using your app, and they're the ones who eventually pay you. So you should really listen carefully to what they have to say. And usually, even if you think their ideas are like crazy or whatever, you should still listen to what they have to say, because chances are other people have the same complaints, but they just haven't spoken up. And some might even offer new feature ideas for you. So in a way, it's kind of like you're getting free advice from them. And my ninth advice is that word of mouth is very important. See, there's a reason why Flappy Birds was a hit, and the answer is not from ads. The owner said that he's never bought a single ad before. It's actually word of mouth why the app got so popular. And you've probably heard of this app because of word of mouth. Maybe your friend downloaded it and challenged you to beat their score, or maybe you saw someone post a high score on Facebook and you were curious like why they were doing that. Or maybe someone made a funny reaction video to them playing the game, and then you were curious about what game this was. Or maybe you've never heard of this game before and this is the first time you're hearing about it. Either way, you're still hearing about it from word of mouth. So word of mouth is important, but how do you get your users to tell other people to get the app? How do you get this word of mouth? And the way I do it, or the way I see other people do it, is to elicit an emotion from your users. And let's take Flappy Birds, for example. That emotion is frustration. And they will tell their friends, like, I really hate this game, and then their friends will be curious, like, why do they hate this game so much? And they will get the app. Or for some people, it's also a feeling of accomplishment. Maybe they achieved a high score and they want to tell their friends about it. And that feeling of accomplishment also ties in with Facebook and Instagram. And you might not actually think about this, but there's actually high school students right now who are competing against their classmates and friends for more followers and likes on their photos. And there's even apps in the App Store that artificially boost your likes and boost your followers. And the way those app works is that they present you some random picture or some random follower, and you have to like and follow them, and you get like coins for following and liking people, and you can spend that coin to post your picture up in that same app and get other random people to like your photo. So it's like this whole circle jerk kind of thing. And yeah, people actually do this. Like you don't get anything out of having like 100 likes or 200 likes. There's no money involved, but I don't know. People just feel like accomplished that they have like 1,000 followers instead of 200. It's weird, but it's the sense of achievement. That's what it is. It's a sense that you're better than your friends, or you feel popular, and that's how they get their friends to go on Instagram and stuff, because they're like, they want that extra follower or the extra like, and they tell their friends, hey, you should get this app. But it's kind of selfish because they're doing this because they want them to like them or follow their Instagram or whatever they have. And it's kind of like an ego booster for some people. I mean, I'm not saying everyone does this, but I'm saying there are a lot of people who do this, who just, they care about the likes. I don't know why. But who benefits from all this? Facebook does, Instagram does. They're making billions of dollars off these things because all these eyes are looking at their ads, and that's how they make money. So they don't care. They as long as you're using the app, they're happy. So my 10th advice, this is my second to last one. My 10th advice is to think ahead. Life and business in general is kind of like a game of chess, and you have to think ahead. So when you run your business, you have to kind of assume the position of your customers. And one way to do that is to make your app simple. I hate to use this example again, but Flappy Birds can be played with just taps, just 1 tap, 2 taps. I mean, you could start a game in just 2 taps. It's simple, And the reason why you should make your app simple is because people have really short attention spans. They're not you. They're not going to spend 3 hours trying to figure out how the app works. You got to make it simple for them. So a lot of apps have like favorites and stuff. I mean, there's a reason why that is. Like your browser has favorites, or your favorite music station has favorites, or whatever. Your favorite radio app. It's because you have to make it simple, so they just tap once and they get to what they want. I remember some statistic where people were testing out some apps where they made it so that it took more taps to get to what someone wanted, and they found out that for every tap that the user had to get to go to somewhere, they had 20% less downloads. So yeah, just one extra tap is vital. And think ahead in terms of scalability. Now you don't really want your app to only work for a few people. You kind of want to expect that this is going to work for millions of people. So don't have your app. I've made this mistake once. Don't have your app like rely on just one server or something like that, because I made this. See, when my app blew up, I wasn't expecting it to blow up. I thought it was just going to be a dozen users or a few hundred users, not millions. So when it blew up, it kind of destroyed my servers and melted them, because there's just millions of people running. It was like a DOS attack, if you guys know what that means. So make sure your app is scalable. And the other reason I say this is because there's a reason why I make millions of dollars, whereas doctors and lawyers don't. And it's because their salary is limited by time. They only see X amount of clients per day, whereas my salary is not limited by time. It's just limited by the number of downloads I get. And getting a download from someone, that doesn't take any work of me. I'm probably getting a few dozen downloads right now as I'm speaking, so I'm probably slightly richer than I was before, just by standing here. So if your income is based on the number of hours you worked, there's only so much money you can make. So don't try to go into a business where your income is not based on the amount of hours you've worked. Instead, you should base your income on, number of downloads or something. Then you could potentially make millions by even just charging $1 per person, or just have one ad per person. Ads, every click give you like 10 cents or so, but it adds up. You multiply that by millions and you're going to make millions. It's the same concept as to why movie stars and singers and athletes and book writers, why some of them make millions. It's because they're not serving one person, they're serving millions of people. Whereas a doctor only can see one patient at a time. So my last piece of advice, and this is also really important, is don't chase the easy money. And by this I mean don't scam people or do illegal things. Don't sell your integrity for a few $1,000s. I've seen some people who has money. I've seen some people sell DVDs, and they would dangle their lifestyle in front of people and take pictures of themselves in front of boats or Lamborghinis, and they'll say, hey, if you buy my DVD, you could be rich like me. Or they'll say, like, buy my get rich quick book and then you could be like me. Don't do that. I've seen a lot of rich people end up doing that. Don't do that. It's not worth it. And don't do anything shady to get money, because you want to be able to sleep soundly. You don't want to go to bed worrying that the FBI is going to knock on your door. And I used to do shady stuff back then. I won't say what it was, but I'm definitely much happier now that I'm actually running a legitimate business. So do the right thing and have a clear conscience, and earn your rewards through hard work. And some people don't like to hear that. They don't want to work that hard. But just remember that pain is only temporary. It's not going to last forever. Like I'm not working hard right now, and I'm still fine. Horace Greeley once said, fame is vapor, popularity an accident, riches take wings, only one thing endures, and that is character. I wanna leave one question for you guys to think about before I go. If you flip a coin and it lands heads 99 times, what are the chances of it being tails? So once again, you flip a coin and it lands heads for 99 times. What do you think is the outcome for it being tails? Some people think that it's more likely to be tails because you've had 99 heads, you're going to get more likely to get tails. But the truth is that when you flip a coin, it's always going to be 50-50, no matter what. The coin itself has no memory of what it flipped before. So a lot of people don't understand this concept, and that's why gambling is an addiction, because they lose so many times and they think that the universe will balance itself somehow and then they'll start winning. But life is not like that. I'm here to tell you that life is not like that. So the universe will not tip the scale for us. We have to make our own winnings from what we're dealt with in life. I wanna end this speech with a quote that my father once said to me before he passed away. He said, "Pride, disappointment, and fear all go away when you don't expect to live another day. What's left is what's important. Our time on this earth is short. Make it count, son." Thank you very much. Any questions? Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely, lots of questions. Somebody who has interest in what you do
Yes.
and wanted to get started from the ground,
Yes.
where would you direct them?
Oh, yes. I guess ask this question a lot. You have a. So I want to add that you guys don't have to follow me and make apps. Just you guys should do what you're passionate about. And I say this because there were nights that I would work. Well, not nights. There were weeks that I would work for 72 hours straight, like no sleep, 72 hours. And some people might think, "Hey, you're crazy," but it's actually because I have passion for what I do. So if I was not passionate about app making, I would not have done that. So there's a difference from someone who makes an app who's passionate about it and someone who's just doing it for the money. So I wanna add that before I write this. You can actually learn how to make apps if you go to my website. I actually compiled a whole list. Now I didn't write these tutorials. These are tutorials written by Google and Apple developers. And I just basically, I found all the tutorials where I learned from. I actually didn't learn app making at my college because iPhone wasn't invented then. I graduated in 2008 and iPhone was created in the summer of 2008 or something like that. So I had to learn to make apps on my own. And there's a lot of tutorials out there because there's hundreds of thousands of app developers who are willing to help you. And another good place is to go to Stack Overflow. I don't know if you guys know about this. If you have a question, like if you get stuck somewhere in app making, chances are some other guy got stuck too. You're not the first person to get stuck. And so that's basically like it's like people who are experts, they help out beginners and then they all just exchange ideas and they'll even put some sample code of how to do something. Yeah, so any other questions?
Do they do VHDL on Stack Overflow?
They do a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, I think they have some stuff there.
If you want to learn more, I mean, this is just a sample of the advice that I have. I actually wrote a whole book. I don't want this to sound like a sales pitch, but I've actually written a really good book. It's 5-star rated on Amazon, and I'm not saying that there's no rate us button in my book. So people actually like the book. So that you can get that book. I'll give you guys a student discount. And this is a book where I basically take all the things I know from app development and I give you all the tricks that I know on how to make your app stand out and how to market it. So adding that /student will cut the book price in half.
Wow. Thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Yeah.
So, what was your initial inspiration to teach yourself app making?
The Cisco guy who made $300,000.
Yes.
But the police scanner app. Here's the thing. See, the reason why the reason why I say it's also not luck is because I was prepared when the opportunity came. So the opportunity, like the iPhone coming out, that opportunity is kind of like luck. Like if I wasn't born in this era, that wouldn't have happened. But the part that makes it not luck is that I was prepared for it. So I knew coding and I was ready. I was ready to learn app making. And here's where the opportunity came down. My boss from Earthlink, my former boss before I moved back to New York to take care of my mother, he posted on his Facebook that he said he really liked police scanners. He liked listening to police scanners. And apparently there's a lot of other people out there who actually like listening to this stuff. I don't know if they're just nosy or maybe just, yeah, some people say they like listening to their neighbors' kids get arrested for DUIs and stuff. I don't, it's just curiosity, I guess. But he said he really liked it, so I was interested. And here's the one thing that changed my life. One guy commented on his Facebook status and said, "Hey, go to this website. It has a lot of police scanner links." And I went to that website, and it was a list of all these hobbyists. They basically formed like a website where they were. So the way the police scanner works is that it's one person with an actual police scanner, and you could buy this like for $300 at Radio Shack or whatever, and it just receives like radio waves that are not the usual AM/FM ones. It's a different band. Then that's why you can't hear it on the radio. But if you get the technology for it, which is just another radio receiver, if you get the technology for it, you can hear it. So if there's thousands of people around the world who have these police scanners, and they're willing to upload it onto some cloud server where it will get redistributed to everyone else. So everyone is kind of exchanging all these police scanners. So you could be in Florida right now, and you could hear the police all the way down in Australia or like Canada. It doesn't matter where you are, as long as you have an internet connection to connect to that server. So this website is where all these hobbyists, all these thousands of hobbyists were coming together to share onto this cloud server. And they had an API to that server, to those cloud servers. And I signed up immediately for that API. And yeah, and that was history ever since then.
I do have one more.
Yeah, go ahead. I don't mind.
With what you do to you right now, what are the three most important languages and/or environments that you work in or with?
For app development, so you want to learn Objective-C, which is kind of like C++. This is for iOS. So iPads, iPhones, all that stuff. And if you want to do Android, I'm spelling it wrong. That's right? No. O-I-D. Sorry. It's different when you write on paper than when you write. This is Java. So that's a really popular language. And so Java, there's a lot of things for Java. There's the most popular one is Eclipse, and Google also came out with their own IDE. But most tutorials are in Eclipse because Eclipse has been around forever. Objective-C, there's actually only one IDE for it, which is Apple's own Xcode, which is a really good IDE. So it has its own simulator, so you don't even need an iPhone. So yeah, the strange thing is that I made $1 million from selling iPhone apps, but I actually never had an iPhone when I started. So it's kind of weird because I just used the simulator. And the reason for that is because just before I started making apps, just before I got the MacBook, my contract changed and then I upgraded my phone. So yeah, I signed a new 1-year contract with T-Mobile, and the iPhone was only available to AT&T, and I did not want to pay that termination fee. So it was really weird being a millionaire app developer without an iPhone. You have any more questions, or you good?
Yeah, plenty more.
Yes.
Stop me when you're bored.
No, I'm not bored at all. I'm enjoying this.
Between iOS and Android, do you have a preference?
Yes. I actually I've never coded for Android before, and it's a long story as to why, but I really hate Google. I don't know if you could tell. I really hate Google. So there's a reason why I hate Google, and they stole a lot of money from me. Sorry.
Could you have made more money if you had
Yeah,
put the
definitely.
app on
Yeah,
Android?
definitely, yeah. So the reason why Google stole money from me is because in my apps, I did something really sneaky, and I put a hide ad button on top of the ad banner, and basically it's like if you tap on that hide ad, it closes the ad, so then you don't have to see it. So it's a feature for users. But the thing is that I made that text so small that a lot of people click on the ad banner, and I saw my click-through rate actually double after I did that. So the users thought I was helping them out, but they're actually helping me out. So this was going fine, like all my ad revenue doubled, but one of my ad companies called AdMob, and that was one of the bigger ad companies that I had. It had close to like 90% of all my ad banners, and so I accumulated about $100,000 in that, because they don't pay you until like a month after that month ended. So like let's say April ended. So all the money you made in April, you don't get paid in May. You get paid in June. So you basically get this huge buffer of money that they don't pay you yet. So here's the dick move that Google did. They bought out AdMob. And keep in mind that for 3 years that I've had AdMob, they've never had problems with me with that hide ad button. But Google are very strict with this stuff. And they said that they actually didn't give me a reason, but I'm assuming their reason is that I'm giving them fake clicks. Clicks that, people accidentally pressed. It's not my fault. People have fat fingers. It's not like, it's not like I'm making them press it. There's their own fat fingers, right? But Google was not happy with this, and they banned me from AdMob. But the dick move was that they took that $100,000 and they kept it. So they basically stole $100,000 from me. If they had warned me to take it off, or even just say like, hey, we're gonna cut you off, we're not gonna deal, but here's your money that you earn legitimately. Even if it's half of that money, I'm fine with that. But they just took everything, and it's all because Google bought out AdMob, and ever since that happened, I was like, F Google. I'm not gonna work for you guys. I'm not, because they make 30%. Apple and Google make 30% off your apps, so I'm not going to give them a single cent from me. Oh, so back to the preference. Without my bias, iOS gets more money if you're making a paid app, because Apple users actually have more money, as in more affluent people tend to go with Apple products. Android, it's a free iOS, so a lot of cheap phones are out there that runs on Android. So even though there's a lot of Androids out there, those people aren't buying apps. They're getting the free ones, or they're pirating your apps. And it's really easy to pirate apps on Android. As for ad revenue, they're about the same. But ad revenue depends on how many people download your app. That's not influenced by whether you're on iOS or Android. Because you're more likely not going to hit that mark where every single Android user or every single iOS user is going to have your app. So you don't have to care about how many people have Android or Apple, because it's really the number of downloads you get is from how far your marketing goes. It's not about which you advertise to. So yeah, the ad revenue is around the same. I did hear that it might be possible that Android might get paid more, because there really are a lot more Android users than iOS users.
What do you mean around here?
Hmm?
What do you mean around here?
I mean the whole world. Yeah. Sorry, I don't mean. Did I say around here?
Yeah.
No. I meant the whole world. There's more. I forgot what it was. I think it was like 30% is Apple and like 60% is Android or something. I don't know. The numbers always change. But they definitely have more share of the market. But those are poorer people sharing the market. Any more questions? Those are good questions, by the way.
Any other questions?
I'm off the hook? Yes.
Okay.
Thanks,
I can
Alan.
eat my dinner. Thank you.
He's presenting the same speech to Harvard, so you guys get a heads up on what he said.
Sorry, let me put down that YouTube link. So this speech, actually, I think you guys got a better speech than the people before, because when I made that speech on Tuesday, it was the very first time I delivered a speech before, so I was really nervous, and I spoke like I spoke like this, and and you guys got a better speech. So if you want to hear the worst version, which is pretty much, I think I covered most of it. It's I have a YouTube channel.
That speech got him how many hits so far?
I posted it last night, and by this morning it already hit like 7,000.
7,000.
Yeah, because I didn't expect this to happen, but a lot of people really liked that speech, and then they started sharing it, and I think I had like 105 shares just on my Facebook post. And let me give you guys my Facebook, which is usually where I post my stuff. I don't normally make YouTube videos, but if I have some advice, some new advice I learned, I will try to share it with people, because I actually don't mind other people. I want other people to be successful. It's not, I make these speeches because I grew up poor. I grew up without money, and then without all these tools, without all these people posting up tutorials online, without that guy with the Lamborghini in the beginning, I wouldn't have been motivated. And so I'm kind of paying it forward to the next generation entrepreneurs. So I don't mind you guys being successful. I don't mind you guys being my competitors in the future. And you guys probably will be if you make apps. You're going to compete against me. But yeah, I'm not those type of guys who, once they climb up the ladder, they pull the ladder out and they don't let anyone else climb up. I'll put down more ladders for you guys, and I'll help you guys up.
Great. And we thank you for that. We appreciate him coming by and sharing us his knowledge. And hopefully this has inspired you guys to do something on your own. Create your own app, create your own device, create whatever you want to. Don't be limited by your salary. You're going to be starting to work. Don't be just limited by 8 to 5 job. As he said,
you can
after
have both.
hours,
Yeah.
weekends, nights,
Yeah.
go and learn. And that's exactly what I did as well. You just have to keep learning and learning. There's no end to learning, especially after you finish. And everyone thinks once they finish college, they get an 8 to 5 jobs, they get a good pay, and they can relax. No, it doesn't stop there. Unless you want to be that complacent, Go ahead, go read up, buy books, I've got tons of books in my study that I only read one chapter because that is what was important to me. And people ask me, why do you have all these books? Because they are important to me. I use them from time to time. So build up your own library of knowledge, whether it's, reading through all the tutorials, or whether it's buying books, or listening to people like Alan. Build up your own knowledge base about life, and hopefully you can produce something that's going to be beneficial to mankind. Okay?
Oh, one more thing. So if you go to regoapps.com/learn, I have some, it's illegal, but I have some pirate links in there that will get you free books. So you don't even have to pay for these books. Yeah, so I should have covered the audio on that.
I didn't hear that.
No one heard that. But books are free online. Just look up your book title .pdf on Google. It's not a secret. A lot of college students know this.
Although there's electronic copies of books,
He
and
he
you guys
likes
can
old school.
benefit from that, I still like that paper feel. For some reason, I feel that I can learn better with reading something from paper. I think because of my background, I come from paper.
No, it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
A lot of people do prefer the paperback, and so even my book, it's on Amazon. The title itself is called Life Hack. So if you want the paperback, another plug for my book. Sorry, but it's a good book.
Great.
All right.
I'm actually looking forward to reading your book as well.
Thank you.
Cool. Good stuff. So,
He's saying that legitimately. He's not plugging my book because he kept asking me for a copy of my book.
I'm getting my free copy.
Free? What?
Actually,
Yeah, I'll
Alan
give it
and
to you for free.
I are table tennis players. I have my own club in my little town, and he comes and plays with us. So we have a little league going.
So you know what's funny is that when I joined his table tennis club, he had no idea how rich I was, and so for about, what was it, like 3 months or 4 months that you've known me, yeah, you had no idea that I had a lot of money, and then one day, see what happened was I would try to park as far away as the table tennis club as possible, because I drive a blue Lamborghini Aventador, and one day I usually wait until they leave, and then I get into my car, and then they would make comments about the car, and then I would just like stand behind and just, But then one day he caught me getting into the car, and then busted, and now I'm here delivering a speech. I could have gone away with it.
You're going to make use of his knowledge. I mean, he's just a powerhouse. He's so conservative and modest. You don't even know that he exists. So I'm glad you came, and you're educating the new generation. And I'm going to get you in to teach other classes in the future, hopefully. No, I meant
One-time deal.
Give the speech.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he knows a lot about apps, so maybe in the next classes I will get him in to give a short lecture on what he's doing.
Okay. So thank you, guys. I'm just gonna be here working on apps, so ignore me.